Welcome to another episode of Just Because Live. I'm Chris Nicolason, and today I'm honored to be joined by Nathan Newbrough, who is the president and CEO of the Colorado Springs Philharmonic. Nathan, thanks for coming on the show today.
Chris, I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm like we were talking off air. I'm excited to have you on because my family were fans of the Philharmonic. We are people who enjoy live music. I think between myself, my wife, and my two daughters, I'm the only one that's never actually played a musical instrument, and I can't read music, but I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But all three of them can sit there and actually distinguish everything that's going on. So I'm excited to kind of pick your brain about that stuff too.
How old are your daughters?
So I've got one that's 25 and one that's 23.
Okay, so they're too old for we have a program called Free for Kids.
Oh, nice.
For ages 7 through 17.
Oh, that is awesome.
But they're adults.
Okay, so we're going to piggyback on that too.
Right. Yeah.
And then, so the way I generally like to start is, can you give the people a little bit of background about yourself? Where are you from and how did you get here?
I'll do my best, Chris,
Yep.
And thanks again for having me on. The Colorado Springs Philharmonic has a lot to offer this community, and so the more we can share about that with everyone, our friends and neighbors out in the community, it means a lot. So thanks again for the time. So my background, again, I'm the business manager. I'm not the conductor of the orchestra. I'm the business manager of the orchestra, but I'm a person with a long background in music, and so I was a music kid growing up. I was sort of insatiable when it came to high school band and things. And I knew that I wanted to do something with music. And as an 18-year-old or 16-year-old, I didn't know anything. But all I thought I could do was either be a performer or a teacher. And I said, well, I think I'll be a teacher. So I went to school to be your high school band director.
Yep.
And went to a state college in North Carolina to be your high school band director, and decided along the way that the classroom, I'm not right for the classroom. It's just not me. So I was looking around for something else to do and discovered this whole world of administration of arts organizations. And with a person in this role has a very important tightrope to walk, because you need to support the artistic product always, but you also need to make sure it's permanent and sustainable. And so that means that you're constantly walking the tightrope between business and great art. And what we find with these organizations is that that's the most creative work that we do, the push-pull between the great music and the great business that helps support it long term. And so that's part of who I am at this point. So I graduated, did lots of internships, worked a little bit in rock and roll, and that got some good experience with that, but then found my way to symphony orchestras. And that was really where the light bulb turned on for me. So I worked at the League of American Orchestras, which is a trade association for symphony orchestras. We worked in DC, and then we moved to New York City. And living in Manhattan at that time was amazing, and a great training ground for me. And then from there, I went out to upstate New York to run the Orchestra of the Southern Finger Lakes as their first paid manager. And I was a one-person staff, and I worked in this little office above a pizza restaurant, and managed this little tiny symphony orchestra. And the best thing about that, Chris, was that I got to do every part of the job, except actually playing the notes. Every part of the job. And so I everything from graphic design to accounting to fundraising, I got to do it all, and made lots of mistakes and learned from it. It was wonderful. And then from there, I got invited to come to Amarillo, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So New York to Amarillo, Texas for 4 years there. And we opened a new concert hall, and I got much, much more experience, and then was invited in 2008 to come here to Colorado Springs. And it was a different time for this orchestra at that point. And we've grown a lot since then, but I tell you, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to piggyback on kind of to step back a little bit, because you mentioned a few things kind of along the way, and just for clarifiers. So when somebody says I worked in rock and roll, it's my head starts going you were Elvis's manager or something like that. But can you kind of just talk to us a little bit about what working in rock and roll looked like?
Yeah. So it was a short-lived assignment, but I just had to get it out of my system. I worked at the House of Blues in Chicago, which is if people know Chicago, they know the Newhart Building.
Yep.
Remember the old sitcom Newhart? They've got this sort of honeycomb shaped building or corn cob shaped building. The House of Blues is right under that, and we would present a live show every night of the week. And so I work daytimes in the talent buyer's office. The talent buyer is there. He makes the contracts with all of the visiting guest artists. We presented Ray Charles while I was there, but we also presented the Insane Clown Posse.
Yes,
it's a very different kind of show, but we presented it all, and it was a great experience. Daytime I worked in that office. Nighttime I worked in the box office. And so got just a vast amount of experience with all of that. And it's something I can never replace, but I also just decided it wasn't for me long term. Okay. So that was rock and roll. It was wonderful. And I was also glad to move on.
Yeah, I actually have a friend of mine in Cleveland that's worked for the House of Blues for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
And so kind of some of the same experiences. But so, and then after that, you ended up in New York, in Manhattan. Can you talk about, because what was fascinating when we were talking off air, I lived in Long Island, New York, and I was running a retail store at the time during September 11th of 2001. Yeah. And can you kind of talk about that a little bit for us?
Well, I mean, of course, there were a lot of people in the city at that time. I happened to be in Manhattan during 9/11, and it was just as traumatic for me as it was for most other people. But I was one of the lucky ones. I didn't lose anyone in the towers, and so it was just a moment in time where you feel like a piece of you is just gone. And so we'll have to have a beer sometime, and I can tell you all about it. But one of the things that I was doing at the time in my off hours, I was running the Greenwich Village Orchestra. Okay. Which is this tiny, you've never heard of it. Right. Tiny, all volunteer symphony orchestra, right? But I volunteered to manage them because I wanted some experience. Yeah. And so if you're a cop or you're a nurse at the hospital and you also play the trumpet, you can be in the Greenwich Village Orchestra. Just put that vision in your mind. Okay. Right? So I was managing them, and we were supposed to have a rehearsal that night, and it was normal rehearsal night. We were expecting all of our musicians to show up at a middle school, which is where we held all those, and sort of in the downtown area. And one thing people don't know about that day is that they kept all the kids in school. All the public school kids had to stay in school because it was this major attack on the city. They weren't just going to let the kids go. Right. They had to wait for some adult to come pick them up. And so when we heard this, I called all the musicians and said, look, take care of yourself. Right. But if you can be there because the kids are still in the school. So long story short, a good group of musicians showed up, and we played, I think it was Mozart. We played Mozart for the kids who were still in the school, and they came down to the auditorium, and it was this moment I'll never forget, Chris. Right. So, I mean, nothing like the heroism that we saw from the first responders that day, but it was a time when everybody wanted to do what they could. Yep. And that was something that we could do. Yeah, that was the one time I've lived out on the East Coast, and I cannot agree with you more. I do think it was a time where everyone came together. Right. So definitely would love to hear more about it off air at some point. Yeah, sure. And then after that, you end up in Upper New York, and you were talking, and this is interesting to me because as a business owner myself, we started a little over 5 years ago, and here we are, myself and my partner, and we're doing everything, answering phones, to taking the trash out each night, doing every little thing. Yes. And I think that kind of in having kids myself, that idea of wanting things to be perfect and things like that, can you kind of talk about how you cut your teeth doing that stuff and how helpful that was for you, kind of having to do everything and learn, each of those kind of roles that goes into making a place function? Well, I'll do my best. It's a good question. I will say that when I started there, it just felt like a blank slate, Chris. And I was lucky enough to be given enough reins to do what I wanted to do. Right. I'm a person who has really high standards for my own work and for the work of those around me, but it starts, of course, with my own. And so I had to learn those things on the job, and had to learn to prioritize in a way that most people don't ever have to do, because there's a volume of work that has to be done with a sizable excellence that you want to have.
Yep.
But there are only certain number of hours in the day. So learning to prioritize those things that are most important versus those that can wait, or that have to be put off, is a life lesson that not many people get. And so I was lucky to be able to do that. And eventually I was able to hire other people to help out with other pieces of the job. And that also helped me grow as a manager. But I would never, I could never replace that experience in my life, because bootstrapping an organization, there's nothing like it, as you know.
Right. Absolutely.
You are doing everything from answering the phones to, as you said, taking out the trash.
Yep.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's at the same time.
It is. It really is. Because then too, you have the perspective to look back, as you're growing and you're bringing other people on, to be able to look back and really appreciate kind of where you come from.
Yes.
And what it's turning into. And as you're seeing kind of the vision for what you want it to grow into, it's a great experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So then you go from Amarillo, and then in 2008, you end up here in the Springs. Talk about kind of, getting here, in the Springs, and what that starting out experience was like for you at the Philharmonic.
Sure. Well, people may not know that the Philharmonic is, right now, we're in our 95th season.
Wow.
We were started in 1927. And for all of those years, like, imagine what it went through in those times. It went through Depression. It went through World War. It went through, armed conflicts overseas, a lot of growth in the community, and also some times where the community growth was stalling. And so, but all of those years, the Colorado Springs Philharmonic was always here. Prior to 2003, it was known as the Colorado Springs Symphony. In 2003, they had a bankruptcy, which was really unfortunate. This reorganization. And I wasn't there for that, of course. I came in 5 years after the fact. And so what happened in 2003, the new organization came back with a lot of momentum. People in the community said, we want there to be a symphony orchestra here. Here's $50.
Right.
Donation, right?
Yep.
And then we never heard from that person again. So it was really nice that they responded, but there was a lot of momentum, and then the momentum ceased.
Yeah.
By 2004, I think. And so I came in 2008, when it was very difficult at that point for the organization to attract an audience. And so I had to make some very big changes very quickly from an administrative point of view. And one of those changes was to tell the music director, Lawrence Layton Smith, who was our music director at the time. I said, Larry, we need you to be the greatest artist that you can be. We need you to pull out all the stops and do the greatest concerts that you can do. But prior to that, he felt like he couldn't do what he wanted.
Oh, wow.
He felt like the budget was constraining him from doing adventurous work.
Sure.
And I took a contrary view and said, we can't fix the budget unless you do adventurous work.
Yeah.
If you do really great stuff on the podium, we can't fix the business side. So we started there and said, make it happen on stage. What do you need to make it happen? Make those concerts really exciting. We also, at the same time, said it's half price. Season tickets are half price if you're new.
Okay.
So new subscribers got half price in their first year. And what that all amounted to was we just about tripled the audience in the first 2 years, which is extraordinary by any measure.
Yeah.
And we've stayed very strong with season ticket. Our season ticket audience is as robust as it's ever been going into the pandemic. And so now we're sort of inviting those people back to join us again. And we just announced the new season. We just announced the new concert season, and people can find out about that on our website, csphilharmonic.org. And season tickets for that are available right now.
And we'll put that down at the bottom as well here for you.
Yeah, great.
And we're going to talk about the new season as well here in just a minute, because there's a couple. I think you have some shows too that definitely, if you're not someone that goes to the Philharmonic often, you guys have some things too though that'll really attract people that that are maybe like some outliers. And
there's something for everyone in this season.
Yeah,
There really is.
I would agree. Yeah. And so then you had mentioned to me, you had this statement. I absolutely love this statement that talks about kind of how you've grown. But this statement, I love it. It's you stated that stability adds to the artistic product. Can you kind of talk about that and kind of your philosophy on that for me? Because I think it is such a strong statement that it needs to be heard.
Well, the what happens on stage and what happens off stage here in the back office are inextricably intertwined.
Right.
You cannot you cannot put on a great performance on stage unless you have a stable organization underneath it all. And so what we want, I'm an audience member as much as I'm CEO, right?
Yeah.
What I want when I'm sitting in the audience is to see an unrestrained orchestra on stage.
Right.
Who feels that they can do anything because they've been allowed to do anything.
Right.
And isn't that exciting when you're seeing artists of this caliber doing adventurous work that even they didn't believe that they could do? We've seen that.
Yeah.
But it takes a partnership between the artistic and the business side to make that happen. And if the business side is threatened, it's going to have repercussions on stage. Right. If the business side is stable, that also is going to have positive. It's going to create a positive environment on stage. Because there will be a sense and a knowledge that the organization is not under threat. Right. And so when the music director is choosing the works to be performed in the new year, we don't really talk about money at all.
Right.
We talk about what's going to attract an audience.
Yeah.
What does the orchestra need to become a better orchestra?
Uh-huh.
What does the audience need to hear from us? Is there an anniversary of some kind that we want to celebrate?
Yeah.
And also just what's awesome.
Yes.
What are the great pieces that we can present?
Right.
And instead of saying, well, what can we afford this year?
Yeah.
Awful. What a terrible conversation.
Yes.
So my job is to say, this is what we're doing now. Let's figure out the budget and make it work.
It's interesting. I was just and this is totally off. We haven't talked about this, but I was just watching the HBO just started a new show called Winning Time, which is about the construction of the LA Lakers.
Okay.
And right whenever they were going to get Magic Johnson, but there was a shift between ownership. So the original owner was.
You're not going to ask me about basketball, are you?
Not at all.
Okay, good.
But it's fascinating because even with this, so Jerry Buss was just coming on buying the team.
Okay.
So he had something. So he's trying to court Magic, but the original owner is saying, no, I still have final say. And the original owner is all about the budget, right? And he's like these constraints. But Jerry Buss, Dr. Buss, he's like you were just saying, what's going to be awesome? What's going to bring Showtime to LA? You know, and then knowing though that awesome will ultimately attract, a better audience, a better experience and everything else. So it's just a fascinating parallel,
right?
About kind of an overall experience that you're looking for. And just this cohesiveness that you have between both the musicians and the business side of it too. It's like they've got to work in tandem in order for this whole thing to work out well.
Right. Another way of saying it is that I didn't come up with this. There's a great author who's written about these things. The statement is, you can't cut your way to good health.
Yeah.
Maybe in the very short term, maybe, but not long term.
Right.
Not long term.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's talk for a minute too about the business side of things, right? So with the title of president and CEO, those are important titles. So exactly. No, it's so we were talking.
It sounds really fancy, but
right.
Yeah.
I feel that. I understand completely. So what things, and we talked, you don't have a general day-to-day, but talk to me about some of the big things that you really enjoy doing as president and CEO on that business side.
The thing that I most enjoy, I enjoy different parts of the job, but two things that I really enjoy most are being a part of the artistic conversations. And not that I really sway the programming much at all, but being able to lend a perspective here and there as an audience member, because in the end, that's what I am.
Right.
So I think that's very rewarding. And we talked some about artistic integrity
Yeah.
already. But I also love fundraising. No symphony orchestra that I've ever heard of in the U.S. survives on just ticket revenue.
Right.
If you get any municipal funding at all, it's going to be for special projects, and that will be very limited.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of it comes from fundraising, and most of that comes from individuals.
Right.
And so we do get grant funding from foundations and some corporate sponsorships, but most of it's from individuals. And so that means I'm talking to people like you, Chris,
There you go.
and saying, what can we do together to make this work?
Yeah.
And so it's the fundraising that I get to participate in is very personal.
Right.
And it's not just about sending 1,000 letters out and hoping people will respond.
Yep.
It's about meeting over coffee.
Yeah.
And really talking about the future. And those are the kinds of relationships that I cherish.
Yeah.
With our patrons and with people that I get to interact with. And so I feel very privileged to be in this role and to be able to talk about the thing that I love.
That's great. And like, you can absolutely feel it even like as you're talking about it too. I mean, you can just feel like it's, they talk about how bakers have to cook with love. Your musicians have to love what they do, but you can totally, the way you talk about it, there's a passion that you have within you that you can just feel. I think it exudes out of you.
No.
And yeah, I feel it. So then talk to me then to how that fundraising, kind of works. You guys have 3 guiding priorities and how that kind of works, intertwines with that as well.
Well, these are guiding priorities in my life,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they spill over into my work for sure.
Sure.
Those are service, excellence, and permanence. The excellence, of course, almost speaks for itself. You see that on stage. We want to have excellence in everything that we do. So anything that goes out of our office should be at a standard of excellence that is that certainly up to my standards,
right,
and up to the standards of our audience. So from this marketing piece to what you actually hear on stage and the way it's presented should be top notch. Service goes into the way that we serve this community, not just through what we do on stage, but by making sure that what we perform is relevant for people.
Yeah.
And is touching people in a special way. But also we can get into matters of community engagement and education. And I have to say, because of the pandemic, those things took a pause.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're working on rebooting education and community engagement activity.
Yeah.
And so people can see more from us in the near future about that.
Right.
But then permanence is also, I think, should speak for itself, but it's not something you'd normally think of.
Right.
Because unless we are permanent, meaning we have the sustainable resources to make sure that excellence is sustained and service is sustained,
mm-hmm.
then we don't have anything long term. So we have to keep that in mind as well. And so if it's a Venn diagram that you're imagining, our sweet spot is things that will serve us long term, that are a great service to the community and are artistically excellent. And so those are my guiding principles, and I think they influence the work of our team here.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And so then you had mentioned at the beginning, which will kind of swing back into the service side and things like that, but the Free for Kids program as well that you guys, can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, Free for Kids is something we started a number of years ago, sponsored by G.E. Johnson Construction.
Uh-huh.
And Free for Kids is just what it sounds like.
Yeah. Practically
every concert weekend, one concert or the other, is what is designated free for kids, and that means that a parent or a guardian can buy one adult ticket at regular price, and they get up to 2 free kids tickets for age 7 through 17.
Yeah,
and so that means 2 adults can bring 4 kids with them. Right. And really, there's no limit on how many can come. We're really proud to offer that. And what we find is that audiences have really learned to use that. And you can find more information on our website about that csphilharmonic.org. But Free for Kids is a great concept. It's so simple, and people love it.
Perfect.
So we hope people will use it more.
Yeah, that is awesome. And then I also want to talk to you because I had mentioned to you that my daughter had an instructor who actually plays in the Philharmonic, and we're big fans of his. Mm-hmm. And talk to me. So we always have these ideas of hey, they play in the Philharmonic. This is all that they do. This is the thing. And that's not actually the reality, is it?
No, I mean, we are reality time. We are a middle market community. We're not New York City, and therefore we are not the New York Philharmonic.
Right.
We're also not the Lakers.
Yep.
So this is a part-time job for musicians of the orchestra, although they are gifted enough to land a job in one of those major cities. And so we encourage them, if they go and audition and win that job, we're so delighted for them.
Yeah.
But we're also delighted that they stay with us if they choose to.
Yeah.
So what we find is our musicians have made a life here, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
They come here and they audition, and some of them are straight from Juilliard or from Yale or from these big institutions of learning, and they come here to Colorado Springs and they start making a life here. And so what that means is they play in the Philharmonic, yes, but also they might hold a university position as a faculty member. They might teach privately. They might own a business, or they might have a job that has nothing to do with music. We have a research scientist. We have a computer consulting business owner.
Wow.
We have one person's an accountant with I think a law firm. And so it is it's incredible. These are incredibly varied individuals who are gifted at what they do, and we are just lucky to be in their presence. We're lucky to have them with us in the Philharmonic, and if we can, along the way, if there's a way for us to do this, we want to support them in making Colorado Springs not just a place, a stepping stone, but a home. And so we do celebrate with them if they go on and get the next great job, but we're glad to have them while we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually just at a conference down in Atlanta, and a friend of mine from New York was there, from the city, and he's like, but his son's going to DU, and he's like, every time I come out to DU to visit my son, he's like, I ask myself, what am I doing in the city? He's like, it's so gorgeous out there. So there is something to be said about, the backdrop and everything else that we've got to offer out here.
Right. And these people are very committed to Colorado Springs. Yeah. And we're very fortunate to work with them and to be able to have the opportunity to hear them together on stage. Because there's nothing like it.
All right. So we want to respect your time. We have a few minutes left. So in these last few minutes, I want to talk about the upcoming calendar and what you guys have coming up here. And you have actually a show coming up here. You have two days coming up next week.
Next week?
Yes. So can you talk about that for us?
Sure. So the 15th and 16th of April, Friday and Saturday night, we're performing Raiders of the Lost Ark. And this is the cutting edge of technology in the world of symphony orchestras, right? So what they've done is they've taken the entire film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and removed the music score from the film, right? Okay. So what you have is the dialogue and the sound effects and everything except the music. And so what we have for you on this weekend is the entire film on a giant screen above the stage. The orchestra is there, about 80 musicians or more, and they are playing the score live with the film.
Really?
It is outrageous.
Okay, so this is crazy, because I actually thought it was just, so whenever I first read this too, because my brother-in-law told me about it, and I thought it was just the symphony playing just like the score, you know what I mean? Playing the score from the movie. This is great.
Oh, Chris.
Oh.
It is outrageous.
Okay.
It is. We did the last one we did was Coco, the Pixar Coco.
Yes.
And that was amazing. We did E.T., we've done Pirates of the Caribbean, we've done Fantasia. Way back we did Fantasia, and we've done some other ones as well. It's an extraordinary experience. And because you find your mind focusing on the film and forgetting about the musicians for a moment. And then your mind switches and starts focusing on the musicians and ignoring the film.
Right.
That engrossing. And it's really a technological wonder.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. So I'm surprised and excited at the same time right now. Okay. So then about a week after that, you guys have another show coming up.
Right. The performance is Mendelssohn's Italian, which is the weekend of April 23rd and 24th, Saturday, Sunday. This is part of our Masterworks season. And so it's conducted by our associate conductor, Thomas Wilson, and it features 4 musicians from our orchestra as soloists.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and that's in Joseph Haydn, classical traditionally classical composer, Joseph Haydn's Sinfonia Concertante, and then we're performing Mendelssohn's Italian Symphony. And so it's well known. I will not sing it for you, but it's a moment not to be missed. It's really the Philharmonic at their best in this kind of performance.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, especially this next one.
Right. So, the music of Aretha Franklin. We're doing Aretha, Queen of Soul, on May 13th and 14th, Friday, Saturday, and it's a tribute concert. But I have to tell you, the lead singer we're bringing in for this is Carpathia Jenkins, and she is an enormous talent. And brother, we're going to raise the roof on the Pikes Peak Center that night. And so we're very excited. Aretha, Queen of Soul, in early May. And then we have our final concert of the season, Appalachian Spring, featuring a conductor, Joanne Falletta, who is the music director of the Buffalo Philharmonic. And she'll be doing Copland's Appalachian Spring along with other works in that final concert in the middle of May. And so we feel very fortunate to offer this music, and we hope people will come and join us.
Perfect. All right. Well, Nathan, I appreciate you going through that calendar upcoming. Like I said, I'm the Raiders of the Lost Ark. You have me like on the edge of my seat. I'm excited.
Well, act fast because tickets are going to go.
Okay.
They're almost gone.
Okay. And then I'm going to put the website down at the bottom. So we've got csphilharmonic.org. I'm assuming that's the best way to, find out about you guys over at the Philharmonic, to, get tickets, to see what's upcoming, things like that.
Yes, absolutely. Go to the website. Everything is there, including details on the new season, where we are doing the same as Raiders of the Lost Ark, except for doing Marvel's Black Panther.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's exciting. And talking about getting kids to that one too. Holy cow. You guys could have a great, yes. Oh, that's brilliant.
It's all happening here at the
I love what you guys are doing. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And we look forward to seeing you guys down at the Philharmonic.
Proud to do it. Thanks,
all
Chris.
Right. Thank you. Bye now.
Are we done?